The office was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt hollow and heavy, save for the rhythmic squeak of a mop gliding smoothly across the gleaming tile floor. The faint aroma of cleaning chemicals hung in the air, mixed with the lingering bitterness of stale coffee. Overhead, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, their harsh white glow making everything feel sterile. At the far end of the expansive, open workspace, 3 employees remained at their desks. Ryan, Brandon, and Claire sat clustered together near the center row, laughing and chatting softly, as if the late hour afforded them immunity from professionalism. Their computer screens were on, open to spreadsheets and reports, but none of them were actually working. Instead, they shared idle jokes and mindless scrolling through their phones, their focus long since departed from anything resembling productivity. Across the room, moving silently between the rows of desks, was a woman. Her name tag read Carla Moreno, though few people ever bothered to read it. Carla was middle-aged, her dark hair streaked with strands of gray, tied neatly back into a bun that kept it out of her tired eyes. The deep lines etched around her mouth and the calluses on her hands told a story of years spent in quiet labor. She wore a navy blue cleaning uniform, slightly faded from countless washings, and sturdy black shoes that muffled her footsteps. As Carla approached their area, bending over to collect crumpled papers from an overflowing waste bin, the trio exchanged knowing glances. Ryan leaned back in his ergonomic chair, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Man," he said, drawing out the word with mock wonder, "imagine doing this for a living. Cleaning up after other people all night." "No thanks." Claire let out a soft chuckle, rolling her eyes as she sipped her flavored seltzer. "Seriously," she agreed. "You'd have to have, like, zero ambition. What a depressing job." Carla said nothing. She kept her gaze on the wastebasket, her hands tightening slightly around its plastic rim. She had heard worse things before. Much worse. But that didn't make their words sting any less. Brandon, who had been absently spinning his pen between his fingers, suddenly grinned as an idea took hold. Without a word, he picked up his half-full coffee cup and tipped it just enough of the dark liquid to slosh over the edge. It splattered onto the clean tile right in front of Carla's feet. "Oh no," Brandon said, feigning surprise with exaggerated wide eyes. "I made a mess. Guess we need some expert cleaning services over here." Claire snorted, covering her mouth with one hand to muffle her laughter. Ryan shook his head in mock disbelief, his grin widening. For a brief moment, Carla didn't move. She stared at the growing pool of coffee, its rich scent mingling unpleasantly with the sharpness of ammonia in the air. Her pulse thrummed in her ears, and for one reckless heartbeat, she considered saying something. Anything. But the moment passed. Instead, she set the trash bin down with deliberate care, picked up her mop, and knelt to clean the spill. Their laughter continued as she wiped the floor, the cheap paper towels soaking up the mess they had made. Brandon nudged Ryan and whispered, "Can you imagine being her age and stuck in a job like this?" Carla heard every word. She finished cleaning the spill, wrung out the mop head with steady hands, and gathered her supplies. Her face remained impassive as she walked away, but deep inside, something stirred. A truth she had carried for a long time. Tomorrow, everything would change. The following morning, the office buzzed with nervous energy. It was an unusual sight for this particular branch of the company. Desks were tidier than usual, and employees, typically casual in both dress and demeanor, straightened their ties and smoothed their skirts. Whispers floated across the space as people speculated about the impending arrival of the new CEO. The previous CEO, Richard Hanley, had announced his sudden retirement just 2 weeks prior, citing personal reasons. The announcement had shocked most of the company, and the identity of his successor had been a closely guarded secret. Today, they would finally meet the person who would take the helm of Hanley Enterprises. Ryan, Brandon, and Claire sat at their usual cluster of desks, near the large glass conference room. They were dressed sharply, more so than usual, though their air of casual arrogance hadn't dimmed. Claire leaned toward the other two, smirking. I heard the new boss is some big-shot executive from New York. Probably an old guy with a terrible haircut and a stick up his. Ryan chuckled. As long as I don't rock the boat too much, I don't care who it is. Brandon smirked. Yeah, if they let us keep coasting, they can be 100 for all I care. The conversations around them faded as Mr. Thomas Bennett, the senior board member, stepped up to the podium in the conference room. His distinguished presence and carefully pressed suit commanded immediate attention. He cleared his throat, his expression one of satisfaction and anticipation. Good morning, everyone, Thomas began. Thank you for joining us on this important day. Leadership transitions are always significant moments for any company, and today marks the beginning of an exciting new chapter for Hanley Enterprises. A ripple of murmurs passed through the employees seated around the room. Thomas continued, "It is my distinct honor to introduce someone who embodies the core values of hard work, integrity, and resilience. Someone who understands our company from the ground up." The double doors at the back of the conference room opened. Heads turned. Chairs creaked as people shifted in their seats for a better look. Carla Moreno walked into the room, but she was no longer wearing a cleaning uniform. Instead, she wore a tailored navy blue business suit that complemented her poised, confident presence. Her dark hair, once tied back for practicality, was styled into an elegant chignon. She walked with a calm, purposeful grace, each step of her polished heels echoing through the silence. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ryan's jaw dropped. Brandon's pen slipped from his fingers. Claire's mouth opened, then closed again as she blinked rapidly. "No freaking way," Brandon whispered. "That's impossible, Claire stammered." Carla reached the podium, her gaze steady as she surveyed the stunned faces before her. She took a breath, then spoke with clarity and authority. "Good morning. I'm Carla Moreno, your new CEO." Silence. Ryan's face turned ashen. Claire looked like she might choke. Brandon sat frozen, staring as if his brain refused to accept what he was seeing. Carla's eyes moved across the room and landed briefly on the 3 employees who had mocked her just hours earlier. There was no anger in her expression, only a quiet, unshakable certainty. The days that followed felt like an entirely different world. The casual, careless atmosphere that had once permeated the office had evaporated overnight. Employees who had once been lackadaisical were now attentive and punctual. Conversations were quieter, more respectful. There was a sense of vigilance in the air, as if everyone was on their best behavior, and rightfully so. Carla's presence was commanding, but it wasn't born of intimidation. It came from something deeper, a calm, unwavering strength that inspired both respect and a little fear. Ryan, Brandon, and Claire no longer lounged at their desks. They sat upright, hyper-aware of their surroundings. Their usual confidence was gone, replaced with nervous tension. From her new glass-walled corner office, Carla observed them in passing. Her meetings with senior executives were efficient and focused, her decisions swift and fair. She made time to walk the floor each day, listening to employees, learning their names, asking thoughtful questions. But there was no doubt that she remembered the night they had tried to humiliate her. One afternoon, Carla left her office and walked straight toward their desks. The sound of her heels clicking on the tile floor made all 3 of them stiffen. "Ryan, Brandon, Claire," Carla said, her tone calm but unmistakably firm. "A moment, please." They followed her into the conference room, their stomachs tight. Carla closed the door behind them and turned, crossing her arms as she leaned against the table. "Tell me," she said, her voice steady, "what did you see when you looked at me last night?" They said nothing. Ryan stared at the floor. Brandon fidgeted. Claire opened her mouth, then shut it again. Carla let the silence hang before continuing. "You saw a janitor. Someone you thought was beneath you. Someone who, in your eyes, had no ambition." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I started at this company cleaning floors," Carla said quietly. "But I took every opportunity to learn, to understand every part of the business. While people ignored me, I studied them. I listened, and I worked." Her gaze sharpened. "Respect is not given because of title. It's earned through character and effort. If you want to be more than you are, then act like it. They nodded mutely. 1 week later, the office was transformed. The arrogant banter was gone. Ryan, Brandon, and Claire kept to themselves, working diligently on complex assignments they had never been trusted with before. Their laughter was replaced with quiet concentration. Mistakes were met with constructive feedback from Carla herself. Always fair, but never sugar-coated. Kevin, a junior employee who had often been overlooked by them, watched the change with quiet amusement. Karma, he muttered. Carla stood in her office doorway, surveying the floor. She watched Ryan respectfully assist a difficult client on the phone. Claire navigated new responsibilities with careful attention. Brandon stayed late to double-check reports. She approached them near the end of the day. "How's the workload?" Carla asked. Ryan cleared his throat. "It's a learning experience." Claire nodded. "We're adjusting." Brandon sighed. "It's a lot, but we'll manage." Carla let the silence stretch, then nodded. "Good. Growth comes from discomfort." She took a step forward, then paused. Without turning back, she added one final note. "Oh, and if I ever hear of anyone disrespecting our cleaning staff again, they'll have me to answer to."